Welcome along to another episode of Trip Notes. It's a New Zealand Herald travel podcast. It's brought to you by House of Travel, Better Together. And our special guest, she is something of a legend when it comes to the New Zealand hospitality scene. Judith Tabron is a chef and restaurateur. She's also now hosting My Restaurant Rules on TVNZ2. And let's say hello to you, and also hello to co-host and New Zealand Herald Deputy Editor Stephanie Holmes.
Hi Tim, and hi Judith, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming along. I'm looking forward to getting into My Restaurant Rules, another reality TV addiction for me, which is great.
She's a big fan.
Yeah.
And we're doing a cruise special, and according to Stephanie, who has researched you, what have you done, like 8 cruises?
Yes, I have.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And because if you're listening to this on the day of release, October 1st, it is Cruise Month from today, and it's a whole month dedicated to cruising. So we're doing a special episode just about cruising, talking to Judith about her travels by ship.
Yeah. And the whole thing is because you've got the Travel Mag, which is every Tuesday, also every Sunday in the Herald. But, as you say, an extra cruise special glossy magazine, and it's the first ever glossy. That's
right?
First ever glossy for the Herald.
If you're listening in New Zealand, go out and get a copy today.
Yeah. So whether you've done 8 cruises or whether you've never done one before.
Yeah.
Oh no, I always read the travel section.
That's
Don't
right.
you worry.
Thank you.
Yes, always.
So we are going to be looking at cruises, and we've got, for our destination of the week at the end of the podcast, we've got a place where a lot of cruises begin and a lot of places end.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to give you the lowdown about this particular place, what you need to know. It has over 900 churches. Ooh. Possibly less exciting that it has 280 fountains. I love fun facts of varying degrees of interest. So anyway, we'll look at that very, very soon. And also for our travel bug section, what not to do on a cruise. You know, maybe some things to avoid if perhaps you don't know so much about cruises.
That's right, yeah. So when was the first cruise you ever took, Judith?
I'm going to have to think about that. It must be at least 10 years ago.
Okay.
My husband and I would normally, if we're going to Europe, would break up the holiday into some city, because I like to do a bit of shopping and my favourite restaurant research.
Yeah.
And then we would normally go hiking. So we've hiked in mainly in France, but also in Spain for a week, where they move your bags each day and you just walk to your next best meal.
That's how to do it.
Yeah.
Such a dream.
So we do our exercise, and then lastly, before we go home, we do a cruise to relax, because we feel like we can put on the 2 pounds that we've just taken off. So that's how we started it. And the first cruise we did was on the Mediterranean.
Okay.
And it was a ship of 600 people.
Oh, okay.
So
because they can range up to like 7,000 people these days, and so 600 is like a nice small number.
Actually, that's the biggest one.
Okay,
that's the biggest one. And then after that, there's been twice I've been on about a 300.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and then my favourite cruise line is only 100.
Oh wow!
So one of the tips for me for my husband and I is that we like the smaller boat because it gets you closer to the ports.
Yeah.
And it also gets you into ports that you won't get into with some of those big, massive ships. But we like the smaller boat because it also sort of has a toy box at the back of it. So you can jet ski off the back and you can paddle board. It's got push bikes on it. So when you're on like a Greek island, when you get off the boat, there'll be push bikes that you can, ride around the villages in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they normally have an activity director who'll be taking you on a hike in the morning. So you could be up to a monastery, or it could be it's sort of a little bit more it's controlled action, so you don't feel like you're just going to eat away.
And the smaller cruise ship is sturdy. If people get a little bit seasick, you might think the bigger ship is going to be better for you. But have you been fine on
look,
all
on the
different
Mediterranean,
ships?
I've never had a rough trip anywhere, but some people feel the movement more than others.
Yeah.
I mean, the last one of the cruises I did, I think it was my last one. Yes, earlier this year, we just came back on a new French ship on a Penang, and we just came from Sydney to Auckland.
Yeah.
And that is actually quite a rough crossing coming across the Tasman. And the first morning I thought, where is everybody? and everybody was not feeling well, and I'm like, oh God, I didn't even notice. So maybe I have a cast iron stomach after all my years in hospitality.
Yeah.
But I do think size you need to think about, because on the smaller boats you don't normally get a balcony.
Right.
And lots of people like balconies. They like to actually have their own space where they can get outside.
Yeah.
So those are sort of some of the considerations that you need to make when you're choosing what sort of ship that you want to go on. If you like a bigger room, you'll probably get a bigger room on a bigger ship.
Yeah.
Whereas the ship that we're on is you have to go out of your cabin to get outside. But then again, it's not so far when you get outside.
Yeah. I think the big ships are quite good for families, like if you've got young kids. I went on Symphony of the Seas, which is a Royal Caribbean one, last year when it was launched, and this is one that can take about 6,000 people. It is so big. It's incredible. And there's so much to do on there, like water slides. You'd love the water slides. Zip lines across decks and like slides that go off the back of the ship. It's just so much to do.
See, this might actually sort of be the travel bug section, and then we'll find out more about your travel background, because as soon as you've mentioned it, it's just popped into my head, this recollection, because yes, you're right, I love hydroslides, but didn't you get stuck in the hydroslide
this story.
on that cruise ship?
That was a different cruise ship,
different one.
And
Okay.
it wasn't because I'm like
That
massively
doesn't
fat or
sound
anything.
good at all.
No, it was a water issue, wasn't
It was just the design of the slide. It was just you kind of go down and then you go up for a bit, but it was kind of like every third person was like not getting enough momentum to go over this bit, and then you'd slide back down again. It was quite.
Sounds quite embarrassing.
It was. There were people taking pictures of me.
I'm sorry to have
I know.
mentioned
Share
it.
that with the world. But anyway,
Forgive me.
it hasn't put me off neither water slides or cruise ships.
Good,
So yeah.
good. Pleased to hear it.
Yes, I think each person has to actually go through and think about the things that they want on a cruise ship, don't they?
Yeah.
Because some of them do nightclubs.
Oh yeah, I went to some nightclubs on
Did
Symphony
you?
of the Seas. Yeah.
Yes. Whereas if you
Dance till
sometimes
dawn.
on the smaller one that we're on, possibly it ends up being more like a sing along around the piano, which is sort
That'd
of
be
quite
great.
fun
Nice.
as
Yeah.
How
well.
much fun
Yeah.
that would be.
What about the food? Obviously, food's very important for you and for me.
That's true, and I've had some great food. Definitely on the Silver Whisperer, which is Silver Seas I've done. The food was amazing, especially in the specialty restaurants where they got an Italian restaurant. It said you had to book, but every night you're supposed to only go there once out of your trip, but I ate in there every night.
Yeah.
Because the food was so good.
Yeah.
And Oceania's food was good as well. And I've been on Seabourn also. The seafood, I don't have a problem with the food. I can always find something really good. And at lunchtime, I don't mind a little buffet. That's great.
Yeah. I love a breakfast buffet on a cruise ship. They're amazing.
And the fruit's always so good, isn't it? And they're really trying more so instead, because really what they're like is 5-star hotel food. That's basically how I would describe it, because they provision often at the start of the cruise.
Yeah.
So, and then they're just going to move it through over the period of the cruise.
Yeah.
But the big provisioning. But I've noticed more and more that they're trying to, when they come into a port, to specialise in some of the food from that port.
That's good.
And I noticed that, in Saint-Tropez they were picking up, going and getting specialty cheeses from that area and different foods. And that happened on the last cruise a lot more. So I think it's that whole worldwide thing of that, green, fresh, local. And that was definitely starting to come through.
Yeah. And what have been some of your favourite ports from the ships you've been on?
The last cruise we did on the Mediterranean was really fabulous, going through the Corinth Canal.
Oh, yeah.
Because the boat actually fitted through there, so that was great. And we sort of came down the coast of Greece and stopped not so much in the famous islands of Mykonos and Santorini, which we can come back to, but down through the coastal towns where you'd have, a good walk in the morning up to a monastery or so, and then come back down and, Greek food for lunch, and then get back on the boat. They were gorgeous. And then through the Corinth Canal. And I was really surprised about Corfu, because for some reason I'd thought of it as an English
Well, I went there when I was a kid. We went on family holidays there, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe when I was a teenager as well. But but it's beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful. It has a gorgeous old city, doesn't it? And the colours there were just amazing. I really liked it. And I do really like Greece.
Yeah.
I was at Santorini, of course, but there's so many boats sometimes at Santorini and so many tourists. And to get up there, you've either got to go in the, I'm going to pronounce this word wrong. Is it funicular? It's not quite right. Yeah, let's just call it a cable car.
Let's go a cable car.
Let's call it a cable
There
car.
we go. Yeah.
And if you don't take the cable car, then you've either got to walk up or they put you on a donkey.
The poor
I know. I think that tourists are being encouraged now not to take the donkey
Right.
because in the height of summer and when there's so many tourists coming off the boats and these donkeys are going up and down the hill, it's not.
You do feel sorry for the donkey. I mean, so I did go on the donkey, and on the way back, I was going to catch the cable car, and there was a massive queue. And so I decided to walk down, and then I slipped over in the donkey poo.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Maybe the donkey was getting its revenge on you.
So I have to say the best thing about Santorini were the little tomatoes, the tomato salads, because it's so water-starved up there and so hot that the intensity of the tomatoes was sensational. I mean, I know people want to rush back to the boat to get their free lunch, but when you stop at these ports, you really need to experience some of the local delicacies that you can get.
And what you're saying about the size of the ship, one of the things you like about the smaller boat is that you can get on and off much more quickly.
Yes,
Yeah.
a lot more quickly. I mean, I've been to Taormina at Sicily twice on 2 different cruise lines. Well, one, we were in the port in a couple of minutes, and the other one, it was like a half an hour tender in, on a little boat to get into the port before you climb up the hill. So it was quite significantly different.
Yeah.
How far you are away from the port.
And what about some of the shows? Do you go for shows on cruise ships?
I'm not a showgirl.
Right.
I saw Jersey Boys on the show. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, and Hairspray as well.
Some of the theatres are beautiful.
Yeah,
All of the
they can be
ships are
stunning.
beautiful.
Yeah.
They're all like, and I mean, did you have alcohol included in your package?
yeah.
So when you,
Trying to remember.
I'm going to say yes.
well, I know when I talk to my mother, she goes, well, I wouldn't want to do that. Well, why would I pay for my alcohol to be included when I only drink 1 glass? And so sometimes these are other things that you have to think about as to whether or not you want a ship that does all food and beverage package. Yeah. And I certainly don't have any problem with the quality of the wines. They're very good. Or if you're not really a drinker and you don't want much, then you need to go not do that package because you'd end up paying a lot more for it.
Yeah. So your big advice for people would be to think very carefully about what they want from the holiday and the ship before they choose.
Yes, and I
an
guess if you're
itinerary,
doing
I guess.
I know I was talking to another friend. She said, and I want to go on a big ship so I can be anonymous, so I don't have to talk to anyone. So that's also another consideration where I probably like talking to people.
Yeah.
So I like to be on a ship where I'm going to actually meet. And sometimes, my husband and I will say, oh, shall we date someone tonight? And we will have maybe had a drink with some people and we say, oh, would you like to have dinner with us tomorrow night?
Nice.
That's fun. Yeah, that does make it fun. I was looking at some of the places you've done cruises to. So you mentioned Australia to New Zealand, a little choppy, but you were fine. So what about, you did one in Canada and it was Montreal to
New York.
What was that like?
Amazing.
Yes, well, obviously the shopping in New York at the end was,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where we did the shows.
Yeah.
Well, Montreal and Quebec,
Yeah.
because of course we went up the St. Lawrence River.
Yeah.
Quebec, I loved Quebec, and I did a walking tour of Quebec. It was, I do like walking tours, so that was just fantastic. But then the rest of the St. Lawrence River was a reasonably boring experience, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, there were little tiny old whaling towns,
Right.
and actually in some of them, like, all of the locals get dressed up and they put Indian teepees out and they're so pleased to see a cruise ship.
Right.
That they're, and we all get welcome. But there were other ports, that We stopped at, and I'd be just about to get off. Actually, I did that with a group of friends. We were probably about 20 of us, 20 Kiwis on it. And I went to get off, and somebody said, "Don't bother." But then we got around, and then we came into Halifax, and came down Newport Beach and down through there, and that was fantastic. Beautiful colours and really very interesting to get off in some of those ports.
And Newport's got some of the most amazing mansions.
Oh yes, we did
the States.
and we had a fantastic trip around there.
Yeah,
loved it.
And the Caribbean as well. You've done some cruising in the Caribbean.
So the Caribbean was about us going to Cuba.
Okay.
So it was cruise, Cuba, and then Mexico, because my husband had a conference there. So into Mexico City, and then I'd booked to go to a cooking class down in Oaxaca.
Oh wow!
So that was that packaged.
That's a great way to get to Cuba because it can be quite complicated if you want to fly there. So going on a cruise is probably a really good idea to.
In and out of San Juan.
Yeah.
And San Juan, great place to visit.
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
Loved all the colourful buildings, and I had tried a lot of the local food. We stayed in an old convent, drank, quite a lot of rum, had a few drinks, it got into the local flavours.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in the Caribbean. Every single one of those islands has their own specialty rum cocktail.
Yeah.
In fact, in one island, the Sunshine Bar,
There's a few bars with that name, but yeah.
Yeah. And the captain of the boat said, you can have 2 of those cocktails there, but you won't be making it back on the boat if you have 3.
What's the food like in Cuba? Because I've heard mixed things about food there.
Beans and rice and fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a top foodie destination.
No, rum, cigars, cars.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful, like the architecture.
Music.
And,
dancing.
Yeah.
Architecture's, really interesting.
I mean, faded colonial architecture.
They're doing up the old city.
Right,
yes,
okay.
they've done quite a lot of the buildings up.
Yeah.
Also did another walking tour.
Yeah.
Yes, quite a fan of.
I love a walking tour too, yeah.
Yeah, we got a guide and, he went through everything and told us a lot of the history, told us how the food coupons worked and about because they have $2 there. They have the one that they use and then the tourist dollar.
Yeah.
And, changing money costs a fortune.
Right.
And they scare you by making you do it at the hotels so that, don't do it at a bank because people will be watching you and they're going to rob you and this sort of, and I don't know whether we didn't really see any of that ourselves.
Yeah.
But they made you feel like that. And, it's funny, there's no shops to buy food. You don't see like a dairy or something like that. You don't see cafes.
As far as retiring on a cruise ship, I don't know, this is a little bit random, but there was...
Is this your plan?
There was a story a couple of years ago saying that there are some people who, instead of going into a rest home, so this is not even retirement. This is a little beyond that, but it's kind of, you can work it out to being a similar price, paying for the rest home
and
versus
much more fun
versus paid to be on a cruise ship.
No, on the Canadian one, this guy, he sits on the Silver Whisperer.
Yeah,
and that ship comes into Auckland, and he told me that he gets off that and he goes around to Grand Harbour for lunch.
Good on him.
That's
that's the way to go.
So seriously, I think there's a lot more people doing it than what you think.
Yeah.
What it is the longer the cruise, the older the person.
Right.
Because they've got all the time in the world.
They've got the time, yeah.
So if you want to go on a younger cruise, it will be shorter.
Okay, yeah, because the average age now 47 apparently for
That's
cruises.
Good. It's getting,
And so it's definitely trended downwards as it's become more and more popular. Apparently last year more than 28 million people worldwide took a cruise, which is just staggering.
It's such a good value, really, because you pay. I mean, obviously there's different levels of cruising, and very expensive, and but you pay to be on there, and then you've got food, you've got accommodation, and the good thing about it as well that I like that you once you're on board, you can unpack once, and you never have to worry about moving your suitcase around.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
especially after we've been hiking and packing and unpacking every day, even if it's only a small bag. It is quite yeah, it is really quite, oh yes, I get to put my things away for
Yeah,
a week
it seems
or
like
10
such
days.
a silly thing to think about, but it is really nice to,
Yeah,
make
absolutely.
yourself at home but know that you're going to wake up somewhere different every day. And
Well, it's like a motorhome. I mean, they're the same
It
thing.
is,
That
yeah.
you're not having to pack up all the time.
I feel like the bathrooms could be better than the motorhome.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
there are
definitely.
certain rules with the motorhome bathrooms.
Yeah.
Some of the smaller ships, I can tell you, there should be some rules around
Really?
the bathroom too.
Yeah, my wife and I were like very strict rules about that bathroom, and we kept to those rules. But what have the rooms been like that both of you have had for cruise ships?
Well, I've both been with my husband, and I've also twin shared with a girlfriend.
All right, yeah.
So I don't have a problem with either way, because it's quite expensive when you've got to go on a single supplement, isn't it?
A lot of cruise lines are coming up with ways to get rid of single supplements, or have deals for people who are cruising by themselves, because that I think that puts off a lot of people, because they think they're going to have to pay extra because they don't have anyone to go with. But some cruise lines are not doing that now, and I think cruising by yourself is
good. I think that would be a good option, wouldn't
Yeah.
it, for them to find some way around
Yeah.
it not being so expensive? Because it's okay. I mean, the friend that I went with, she's been a friend for 30 years, so I don't have a problem. But I think it would feel funny if you went with somebody that you didn't know that well.
Yeah. But I went on a cruise by myself and met loads of people, and it was great. There were other people cruising by themselves, and there were people in couples and families who just, were like being friendly and welcoming people in. So yeah,
They are quite friendly cruises, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. What are some of the things you think people should be aware of about, things they shouldn't do on a cruise ship, or about a cruise holiday?
I don't know. I just don't like those people who always want to save their seat by the pool, their lounger.
You get that everywhere. That's not just cruise ships.
That's a very bad
I
habit.
hadn't really seen it for as badly as the last cruise when I was on, where I think it might have been an English family.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Really?
They'd actually gone to the library on the boat and got books out of the library
Just put them on the lounger.
to put on the lounger. I mean, not that they were even going to read the book. They just put that book on the lounger.
Yeah.
Because
That's
English
bad
people
form.
make fun of German people for doing this, but this is.
Hey, I
English
feel
people doing
attacked
it.
here. Let's move on from English bashing.
I think the excursions you should look at seriously. But I mean, it depends on if you. Sometimes you can just get a taxi a lot quicker and easier. It depends on whether you're a person who's very happy to feel like a sheep on a bus, because some of those excursions, if you don't read properly, you won't realise that you've got like 4 hours in a bus to Florence,
Yeah.
and then see Florence for an hour or so, and they'll organise your lunch, and you might not even end up in a good restaurant, and then you'll have another 4 hours back on the bus. And I just don't know whether that's the best use of a day on your cruise, is 8 hours in a bus, when in fact you could eat in a beautiful little seafood cantina in Livorno, because that's the stop to get to Florence.
Right.
So to me, that's just too far. But then there are other stops that I would say the excursions are good, especially if you want to see Ephesus or Delos or Delphi. Those are fantastic Roman ruins.
Yeah.
I think you need to look at the time that you'll be on some of those excursions, because it can just be too much.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's look at our destination of the week. And as mentioned before, you've got over 900 churches in this particular city. And as far as its history, there are a few places in the world which captivate people as much as Rome.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, it is beautiful.
I've only been there once for 3 days, and it was just magical.
And I haven't had much longer than you.
No. So you've started and ended cruises in Rome before, or
It seems to be a big port for starting and finishing, but the port is about an hour to an hour and a half out of Rome.
right?
And so sometimes people miss that, and that transfer is normally via a car. Like
Okay.
I haven't actually, like a taxi. I haven't ever had a bus down there. So you need to I think it's worthwhile arriving and having 2 or 3 days in Rome, not just one night, because you won't see the Colosseum or go through some of those fantastic ruins or see the fountains or do the Spanish Steps.
Yeah,
and,
it's such a beautiful city. It's so much to see there.
and all those beautiful cobblestone streets and alleyways, and the shopping's fantastic.
Yeah. And the fountains you mentioned, you can
Yeah.
actually drink out of those fountains. The water's
really?
free for the city. And yeah, just fill up your own water bottles.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, the 280 fountains.
That's right, yeah.
Are there any other recommendations that the two of you would have? I haven't been to Rome yet. That the two of you would have, like, okay, you're going to Rome, you've got to see this.
I would think you should do a food tour, like with a guide who will take you around some of the best spots around the city. I don't know if you've ever
Yes,
done
I
anything like
have
that.
done food tours. In
Yeah.
fact, I did a cycling tour in New Orleans,
Yeah.
food tour, which was good.
I love a cycling tour.
Yes, I haven't done a food tour, but I definitely recommend food tours as well. I'm very keen on those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And get down to Trastevere. That's, I don't know if I've said that right, but that's a kind of not quite as touristy part of the city, and it's very beautiful. You get away from the crowds a bit down there.
I think June and July. I think just keep off that August, that 1st of August. I was there last year. I'm not normally there in August. I'm normally there in July, and I was just surprised at how many more tourists there are in August.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It was just especially like big cities like that, and I was in Barcelona last time, and I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's so much and so hot when if you hit a heat wave.
Yeah.
You know,
It's good to go in the off season. That's a tip for travel just generally, like avoid the really high season and you'll get a much better experience.
Yeah, the shoulder's okay. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think for Kiwis, Italy and the same as Greece, we have this perception that it's always hot because we always see photos of when it's hot, and if friends of ours have gone there, they've gone generally when it's hot. But in winter, it can be pretty cool. I mean, Rome's 42 latitudinally, and Auckland is 36 off the top of my head. But it just gets so much hotter than we get in our summer. So yeah, avoid August is the hot tip. But
yes, but
you decided that.
One cruise I did do the Mediterranean in late September, which was, and I did not get in the swimming pool on the boat.
Oh, really?
Too
Okay.
cold.
Yeah.
So.
Don't be too shoulder then.
Just think about what what you want.
Yeah.
I worry about October starting to get a little too chilly.
Right.
But I do find that June and July are better months, and they're so horrible here. So
Yeah.
those 8 weeks, June and July, I mean, really, leave Dodge.
Yeah.
I know.
Can we come with you next year? You must have room in that villa for us.
And
It's nearly full.
Oh, okay.
We're packing the friends in.
and such a phenomenal destination. The slight downside was the reputation of it being a pickpocket
I didn't
hotbed.
have any
No issues.
problems.
No, in Barcelona, I'm sure it's the same. We were absolutely, tour guides, everybody was saying, watch. And I think that those big cities, you have to be so careful.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, obviously, yeah. But yeah, I don't, no, that didn't happen to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
It didn't happen to me.
No.
Excellent. I always think, I mean, if you're wearing pants where you've got a good pocket where you can have your hand on your wallet, that to me, because there always seemed to be advice that have your bum bag or your fanny pack, or the little thing that you slide. And it's like that just announces that you're a tourist to everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
I always thought that was so
And just don't carry
counterintuitive.
too much valuable around with you. Like,
Yeah.
just.
Well,
yeah.
luckily the day of maps is gone, so
Yeah.
we aren't all standing on the corners looking at
quite as
maps
obvious,
because
is
we're
it?
sort of on the phone and just
Yeah,
looking.
exactly.
yeah.
Hey, well, that's really all we've got time for. We just want to quickly mention your show. So, My Restaurant Rules. If people don't yet know about this, what are you doing on the show, and what's the show all about?
So my co-host is Colin Fasnich, who's off My Kitchen Rules, and we have been all over New Zealand looking at local restaurants, so not in cities, but more sort of little small places, and seeing who's got the best food.